The City Council of the City of Southfield conducted as a committee of the whole for June 13, 2016. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Thank you. Mr. Brightwell?
Here.
Mr. Berkowitz?
Here.
Ms. Morris?
Here.
Mr. Mandelbaum is excused this evening. Ms. Seymour?
Here.
Mr. Cruz?
Present.
Mr. Frazier?
Here.
We have 6 members present.
Thank you. Our agenda is pretty short this evening as far as items, but we have a fairly long presentation to start with, which is the City Center project design presentation. So we will move into that. And I also want to say that when we finish with the close our communications, we will recess and go into a closed session. The closed session will be over at the City Hall. So everyone, when you leave here, make sure you show up at City Hall and the council. So, okay, thank you. Let's move into our first item, City Center project design presentation. Mr. Crowe, do you want to start that off?
Thank you, Mr. President, council, and elected officials. We're really excited to bring back the Hamilton Anderson team from the lead, Amy Chesterton, and to talk about a recap from our previous visioning session, talk about the purpose and the vision of our City Center site, review the preliminary analysis and best practices, and then to start to introduce preliminary concept plans. And we have a couple exercises that we have planned for the council and key staff members, more about the hands-on to do some fine-tuning, and then I'll wrap up with next steps. With that brief introduction, I'm going to turn it over to Amy and her team to shepherd us through the next hour and a half or so, and we'll be available to answer any questions after the presentation.
Before we get started, do you want to explain the difficulties we may have so that...
Okay, well,
It's a purple theme tonight.
Yeah, some of the challenges that we have, unfortunately, despite our best efforts in testing everything at 4:30, it appears that the lamp bulb is slowly dying on us from the projector. So we have a little bit washed out images. We're going to do the best we can, try to darken up the room the best we can. And if that's just not working, we'll jump right into some exercises and discussions with some handouts. I will make sure that the entire council and elected officials and key staff members do get a copy of the entire PowerPoint presentation after the fact.
Thank you.
So hi everybody. So bear with us if we get, like Terry said, if it gets to the point where we just really can't see anything, we can turn the lights back on, and we've got a couple other ways we can go about doing this. So for those of you that, I'm Amy Chesterton, I'm the Director of Planning at Hamilton Anderson. I have Mark Farlow, our Director of Architecture, Alex Niehaus, Rockstar Planner Extraordinaire. And I think you also, at some of the other meetings, met Bob Gibbs from our team, who's been helping us with the market analysis on the project. So again, just to recap, so far we've talked a little bit about this. Can you guys hear me okay? We've talked a little bit about the purpose and vision for this project. And when we were speaking to you last time, Bob talked about the analysis that we did, as well as the best practices in other communities that have done this to really try to create a city center. But one of the things that we want to talk to you about tonight are some preliminary ideas. And just to refresh, when this project is over, maybe I'll just skip this altogether. When this project is over, okay, so I can stand back here. Yeah, you mind? No, because I think I'm getting feedback from that. When this project is over, one of the things that you guys are going to do is to distribute an RFP to future developers. And we know that we want to try to put the best language possible that drives the decisions and the vision for what you want this project to be like. So go ahead to the next slide. We've talked about this before. We know that one of the main objectives for this project is to create a vibrant, walkable, mixed-use place. We talked a lot about that last time, and we got a really good amount of input from you based on, do we think this is possible? How realistic of a vision is this? How needed is it? We got a lot of good feedback, both from the stakeholder group and from the various people that showed up. And that's all based on market reality. We've talked a little bit about the area that we're in. This thing might, let me just see this. Make sure it works. We talked a little bit about the area that we're in, obviously the adjacencies to Lawrence Tech, the municipal campus that we're in now. But all of this is all doable within a quarter-mile walk to lots of destinations in your city. And from if we zoom in a little bit, what you see right there in pink, or Lord knows whatever color it is that you're seeing, the actual project site is really will be highly sought after to developers because it's so well positioned across the street from your municipal site, directly off of Evergreen Road, which has had all of the improvements, as well as within a quarter-mile to existing parking facilities and lots of infill development. Oh my goodness, thank you. Fancy pants. Oh, look at this. Thank you.
I'm going to turn this on.
Okay. So all of that is within that quarter-mile walk, the project site, your front lawn, and all of the parking facilities that are already in play. Go ahead to the next one. We talked a little bit last time about what the market study said. It was essentially coming back saying that you could support 184,000 square feet of retail, which equals anywhere from 35 to 50 stores, depending on how you parcel that out, which could equal over 58 million in sales. And the types of, Bob talked to you last time about the types of retail that could be, really depends on how we want to go out and market it, but essentially the ones that were coming back with the highest possibilities were grocery stores, limited service eating. You have a huge gap in actual tablecloth restaurants, places where you can sit down and have people serve you. That was coming back very favorably in the market study, as well as grocery stores. And when we talk about grocery stores, it's not just any grocery store. These are grocery stores with a really more targeted market that have more specialty offerings, that have typically the smaller footprints are what we're coming back there. And then it starts to fall off. There's still potential for many other stores when we talk about things such as bars, breweries, pubs, office supply, apparel, music, miscellaneous store, retailers, etc., and so on. But you can start to see where some of the bigger demands, where the bigger gaps, and intuitively it sounds like you guys could have saved yourselves the money on Bob's services because you all intuitively knew that that was where the gap was. Go ahead on the next one. And from a residential standpoint, we know that Southfield is predominantly made up of single-family homes, and so the market study came back and said that this 8-acre site can support 250 multifamily units. That would equal around 200 rentals and around 40 for-sale condos. But it was really important that study came back that it's not just a build it and they will come environment, that all needs to be within some sort of a rich, dense, multi-use environment. More of the same is probably not going to get it done, but the market study is coming back and saying that's the environment where this residential can be supported. And when we talked about that product mix, micro-lofts, which is just a fancy term for a really, really small apartment, studios, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms plus, 2 bedrooms plus a den, two bedrooms plus a some sort of live-work environment, and those sizes could range anywhere from 400 to 1,600 square feet. with rental rates going upwards of almost $3,200 a month, which it gets you in at around $1.8 dollars per square foot. And that absorption, he feels could be absorbed, full occupancy, all of those units we just talked about, within 2 years. So you guys have a really high demand, according to the market study, for this sort of multifamily environment. Any questions? Go back. Any questions on that? I know we talked about this last time. Okay. And then, oh, this is more on the for sale. The last one, go back to the last one, Alex, sorry. The last one we talked about it, but that would be for rent. And then this one are for sale, those 50 for sale condos. Those unit sizes anywhere from 800 to 1,700 square feet, with a price range of about 185,000 to 400,000 for a for sale price. And those would be absorbed in anywhere from 16 to 20 units per year, or up to 2 to 3 years for full sellout. We talked, when we were here in this room last time, we did the visual preference survey, and when we were in your council chambers last time, we talked a little bit more detail about that visual preference survey. A handful of you filled out the survey and filled it and sent it back in. We really appreciate that. But what we thought was interesting is that the council fell right in lockstep with what the larger stakeholder group appreciated. The most preferred, and again, I apologize guys, you can't see these images, but in general, most of you really responded favorably to pictures of outdoor dining, multiple storefronts, things that were sort of that destination-based environment that we talked about. The residential, that residential overground floor commercial, everything on the second floor, amenities close to the street, open space with proximity to retail, a lot of outdoor dining again, and then from a parking, you all responded really favorably to cars immediately being parked in some sort of a parking facility. The ones that you did not like were just big old spaces. Now again, we weren't being very fair. We kind of teed those up when we set that visual preference survey up. But the things that you responded to, one thing that was a little odd was weren't quite sure why people responded negatively to a newspaper kiosk. Maybe there's a deeper story to that. And again, more single-use environments are what the groups, as well as the council, responded negatively to. And then we got mixed feelings on some of the units. Again, not sure if it's the pop-up that folks didn't like, or maybe more contemporary, or pushing the limits a little bit more on architecture. We were sort of all over the map on how folks responded to those. So one of the things that when the RFP is released, it's important to the stakeholders, it's important to you that you really have expressed a need that you really want to do something different here. And one of the things that we know from best practices is that not only is that better from what you're hearing from the public, better in attracting talent, as we talked when we were first together with the stakeholders, we also know that more dense mixed environments perform better economically. This particular, and again you can't see, so it's kind of hard to do this, you've got two developments right next door to each other on the same street at the exact same intersection. One of them is a coffee shop with right next door to a law office with a little bit of residential above, and right next door is your typical more suburban retail environment. They're both the exact square footage, but when you take a look at the assessed value per square foot, what they're actually earning, this one next door, if you go to, wins every time on how it earns. It just does better. You have two different businesses running simultaneously. You have residential above. You have a more long-term investment for the folks that live above. And from an assessed value, if we just take it down from an assessed value per acre, these places outperform 2 times, 3 times, sometimes 7 times all day long. And that's one of the things that we know that both the stakeholders and you understand, and this is one of the places that we want to try to get you to as we go forward with this development. It's 2 times more valuable in its traditional development pattern, generates more tax revenue, it's more efficient use of public infrastructure, the pipes being used 3 times more effectively, the electric conduits being used more effectively. So again, this is one of the places that we want to get you to. You can go to the next one. So we've already talked to you about the economics of placemaking. And then when we talk about what is walkable, one of the things that we thought was really interesting is that in the visual preference surveys that both the council and the stakeholders responded to, you guys really liked these places where there's, I know you guys just had E to the D last weekend. That's a wild success. Everybody sort of appreciates that environment, but one of the things that we think that the folks in Southfield are having a hard time getting their arms wrapped around is the notion of what is this environment going to look like for us? The reality is we like it in Midtown, we like it in all these other places, but we can't quite picture it here in Southfield because we don't have it yet. And one of the things that we know for sure is that this environment is going to, whatever we create in this area across the street, is probably for most people, probably for 99% of the people, going to be drive-to walkability. They're going to have to get to their point of origin by car somehow and walk within this destination that we created. They maybe will get a little wild and crazy and go across the street and maybe go to the next place, but we're building something here. This is where we're going to be starting probably a new culture for the city. It doesn't mean that the whole city is going to turn into a walkable environment, but we know that this is something that we're going to have to condition ourselves to use. So what is walkable for Southfield might be totally different for what is walkable for Portland or New York City or downtown Detroit. And starting to get an understanding for what means walkable for us is going to be a different move as we go forward. But for the most part, for everybody, it means active street level uses, pedestrian-oriented buildings, sort of that actual urban edge, a mix of uses. Again, over and over again, places where there's mixed use is going to be new for you. Frequent street connections and multiple reasons to visit. There's lots of reasons to go to one place, not just to get a sandwich, not just to sit down, not just to go visit my friend. We need to start layering in multiple reasons to visit a destination. I don't know, did any of you know that the Congress for New Urbanism was in downtown Detroit last week? Does anybody even know what the Congress for New Urbanism is? Okay. There were over 1,700 people from all over the world that came to downtown Detroit, called the Congress for New Urbanism. It's a group of architects, developers, economists, municipal leaders from all over that are really trying to make a difference, and they've been assembling since the mid-'80s on how development patterns move going forward. They know that this economics of place is very powerful. They know that this is a trend that's rising. And they were in downtown, all through downtown Detroit last week. This, which again you can't see, happens to be just simple street level activation that our particular office did in a way to show ways that you can very inexpensively, with a couple of cans of paint, start thinking about place differently. And it was very well received. And for those of you that are interested in CNU, they were falling all over themselves about how much they liked this metropolitan area we call home. So all the things that you probably know well, why we're so well positioned with workforce, with talent, etc. It was a really big success. So we know that this is opportunity to go forward. So one of the things that we wanted to talk about, and again, you can't see it, but this is your approximately 8-acre site. And one of the things when we talked about that economics of development, how can we do it a little bit better? If you were to just release this RFP, what's the general response that the developer is going to have to this? And when we take a look at just anywhere, how could you get the most out of those 8 acres? The first place we took a look at was, here's your 8 acres again, is to do a basic strip mall with anchors and out parcels with single-use buildings. So we just have one place to eat here, one place to park, and then parking around, just like Arborland in Ann Arbor. and what you would yield based on that 8 acres. So that's kind of one way that a developer would do it if he really didn't want to get, he or she did not want to get too tangled up in a lot of upfront expenses. If we were to take it a step further, taking that same 8 acres, and the city really said, we really want you to put some kind of there. We want you to really put something in there. They could take that 8 acres and actually create a little, essentially a boulevard, and start to create this sort of sense of enclosure with a short pedestrian mall. But you would still have single uses, which would be okay. It certainly would be a great place to visit. This is a small little development in Charlotte, North Carolina. But as you're going up and down Evergreen Road, you'd still have you'd still be fronted by parking, and parking from the street, and you would just have one type of destination. Well, it looks like these are 2-story buildings. Those were required by the municipality. Those are just fake up top, but it looks like a quaint little place. If we were to take it a step further and really start to do a little bit more placemaking, like they did at the Village of Rochester Hills, you're going to start wrapping your streets and start to hide that parking a little bit more within those 8 acres. Work a lot better on the placemaking, have a lot of other things for people to do. That first floor is really starting to take off, but again, we would still be at primarily single use, and you would still be at your surface parking. The surface parking is what kills a lot of good developments and really makes it difficult for some of the good developers to get the economics of this thing to work.
Is the space in Rochester Hills comparable to our space?
Yes.
It is.
Yeah, that's why we're comping all of these, just trying to show you how you could do it. Now, actually, go back to the, oh yeah, thanks, Alex. The little, if you're familiar with Rochester Hills, you've got that first area as you go in off the main road. There's a larger out parcel to the east that wouldn't be included in that 8 acres, but for the most part, it's very comparable. But one of the reasons that there isn't as much as there could be is, again, the surface parking. They couldn't quite get over the hump from that development, from the expense, to actually put any kind of structured parking in. And then let's say we were going to take it a step further, where you have just up north from here, Partridge Creek, which is a place where a lot of people like to go. Now we have sort of the intersection of 2 places. They're actually doing a little bit more placemaking in 2 locations. They're starting to line. When you're in there, you really feel like you're somewhere. But again, it's still single use. You can just shop or eat there. And when you drive up and down the streets, it's still, everybody knows it's surrounded by a sea of parking. It's still a great place, but we can do better. And again, when we start to comp some of these places, we start to try to look about how can we absolutely make this the best place possible. And then if we take it a step further, we start to look at the more town center environment. And this one happens to be in a small suburb in Ohio, where now we're really looking at town centers, where you start to see the density is picking up. This is more of a walkable streetscape with multiple destinations, mixed-use program, a lot of program built into the public space. It definitely engages its surroundings. When you drive by it, it doesn't say, oh, hey, there's a mall. I'm driving by a mall. It's, oh, there's something going on in there. Multimodal, it has directly adjacent to transit. And the thing that really got this development over the hump was the fact that they were able to do structured parking with multi-layers, municipal help, bonding, a small TIF, etc. So it doesn't take a rocket science to figure out if we really want to push our development over the hump, we have to figure out creative ways that we're going to make this parking work.
Amy, can I add?
Yeah, please.
So in terms of the Mansfield Town Center, which is literally just down the road, if you go back to the visual preference survey plate that listed everything that you all preferred, that you all saw as desirable, the Mansfield Town Center is actually hitting on, right? It's actually meeting, if not exceeding, all of the points that you felt were important, that it has retail and restaurant, it has residential, it has office, it has open space, and structured parking. So what you all instinctively valued in the samplings that we presented the last time that we were here is actually starting to operate in the Mansfield Town Center by virtue of density, and it's not happening in even our good and local examples. So I think that that's kind of an important correlation, that I think instinctively you guys are on the mark.
Yeah, we're not hating on our sister communities, we just think the time is right and maybe you guys can do a little bit better.
Let me ask you a question. In that location, what's the price range of the homes?
In Mansfield Town Center?
Yeah.
We can look that up for you easily. It's a really good question. I know that they were sold out in 2 years, but sold out at what price point, I don't know. We can definitely find that out for you. That one had a lot of rentals, but a lot of senior attached to it. So we can definitely find that out.
Because if we're in the same kind of design and they're successful, is it in the same price range or is it? Are we dealing with a different economic?
No, you're dealing, Mansfield, Ohio is pretty near the center of Ohio. I wouldn't call it a suburb of Columbus, but it's outside of, and without even looking at it for sure, and I'll get back to you on those numbers, I would tell you it's definitely comparable.
Okay.
We're not talking like a Portland or even a Columbus on that level. It's
Okay.
definitely a very modest community.
Okay.
Yeah, early on, you mentioned, when you gave the overview of what currently exists within this area, you mentioned parking. Parking is ample, more than enough. So how would that correlate with respect to whatever we build, we would have to still build in parking?
Yeah, you still have to build the parking. I mean, the reality is, as much as we all love this place, people are still going to use their cars here. With the exception of the 250 units that are actually going to be already there. If we build it exactly the way Bob thinks it's going to shake out, we definitely need to still build the parking. One of the things we know that we can do is take advantage of, for folks that are going to be visiting this place maybe for entertainment, for shopping, etc. We know that we can use within that quarter of a mile around you. You're going to have a lot of parking facilities, decks. They're probably going to be empty after 5 o'clock.
Sure.
So that's a resource that we can use right away. And the reason we're starting to tee this up is that we think in order for this to have the right mechanics, the right building blocks of the place that we want, we're probably going to have to put a deck in of some sort. And that costs money, and developers are going to push back and whine and say they can't do it. And so a lot of the best practices we want to start bringing to the table are how municipalities have stepped up and met the developer halfway to get the place that they really want them to build. So that's we think, we don't know, but we think that that's probably going to be the missing link to you guys releasing this amazing property to the market and actually letting a developer do this vision that we think that you guys want.
Who are we targeting with the micro lots? Is it our mobile seniors or is it our millennials?
So it's in your study. Have we released the study yet? The actual market study. So it's in your study. We'll make sure you guys get a full report on that. Typically, the micro lots come back at seniors that are snowbirds. So typically they have 2 residents somewhere within the continental United States and students. So that's typically the target market for micro lots. I don't remember exactly which one it was for yours, but that's typical.
I was just wondering if this is a feasibility to thinking of the lot right here on the campus, here at the city, across the street, for instance, right there, of building a deck over here.
Yeah, I mean, that's possible too, but we think that in order to do it, we really want the developer to be a partner with this, and we want it to be within the 8 acres that you're going to be releasing, as well as for convenience, retail, etc. We know that even Michiganders can be conditioned to use parking decks quite efficiently. So it would be, but keep that thought because we think that there's a lot of potential across the street here. Any more questions? I'm sorry, it's so dark and so darn hard to see you guys.
Why is it that with the amount of apartment or hotels being built, why is it that a consideration to have a major hotel put in as an anchor in that site?
Well, actually, that is one of the considerations.
See, grocery store,
Mhm. That actually is one of the considerations, and Bob took a look at that and thought that it's very viable, but it has to be, it's only viable if it's in this environment that we're talking about. It's not just in a silo, and then it would be a boutique hotel. And I don't know if you guys remember, he talked to you guys a little bit about this last time, that the hottest market are single female business travelers that almost exclusively pick their hotels in more walkable destinations. So the answer is yes, there is a market for it, but there's a lot of caveats on that. It has to be in this rich environment that we've talked about. It has to be layered in with multiple uses, and it's there. I mean, he definitely thinks it's there.
acres with a boutique hotel maybe.
Well, but it's not an acre, I mean, it's not a single-use environment. He was talking more like 200 keys tops, and it's more of a vertical situation.
Yeah, that gives you more retail,
Exactly.
yeah.
And
So why would
you're gonna,
that work?
through the chair, Amy's gonna show some concepts that include those uses.
Okay, so here we are, and as a matter of fact, could you pass these out? Again, since we can't see it, we're gonna, even though you can't see the screen, we're gonna put some paper in front of you, you probably can't see either. We're gonna try to help you along a little bit more. So here's our site, again. Civic Center is here, Evergreen is running north and south. Here we are right here. Here's that front lawn loop, the new Arbor Lofts right across the street. So again, when we started thinking about concepts, we took Bob's retail study that said, here's what we think you can absorb. A lot of what we heard from the visual preference surveys, and really started to zoom out a little bit. Took a look at what the context is around the area and what the potential is. So go to the next. And one of the first things that we couldn't help but notice was that if there was, so here's our research, go back one more time, Alex. So again, this is our site, go forward. Here's our site again in this area. And here's Evergreen Road running north and south. One of the things that we couldn't help but notice is that the City Hall, while its front access is really is kind of buried by greenery right now, it's a really handsome building. And if you line up some sort of a linear access that goes across Evergreen Road, around some sort of placemaking, which, you know, if this is the right alignment of a new development, and then landed on either the lobby to a boutique hotel, the front patio of a five-star restaurant. We think that there's a lot of opportunity to line in future development around around your front lawn loop, and then leading into our new development site. So go to the next one. And what you see here is just a real high level. It's also what you have in front of you. Just a really quick high level concept of how we think we could make the most use of what we think the market will bear from a development standpoint. So we have this larger building, essentially all under one footprint with a parking deck attached to it. You have a hotel lobby or some sort of third place, retail wrapping a little bit of surface parking, some sort of new green public space, public placemaking, more retail in this location, and then residential above. And Mark's going to talk about that a little bit more.
If we could go back, thank you.
Mark, just stand up.
Yep, if we could keep it on that for just a moment. I guess the most important move or gesture in terms of what we observed was the potential relationship to the front lawn loop in front of City Hall and how it could actually stitch into the development of the RFP parcel. So we saw that parcel as not something to ignore, but actually something to integrate. And I think that's the most important thing about the front lawn loop. The other thing is that with the two new streets that with the two new streets that run east and west, right, off of Evergreen, they are situated or configured at basically where that existing curb cut is. So there was some common sense that we tried to bring to the new layout for how vehicles and pedestrians could come into the development off of Evergreen, as well as to the extent that pedestrians could cross where they could currently cross in terms of the improvements that Evergreen has made for you today. The other thing is that this larger footprint is not simply one multi-story footprint sucking the life out of that whole neighborhood. It's rather a combination of masses and building heights. So we have a multi-story parking deck that is kind of stitched into the footprint of the building so that the deck is not sort of an albatross sitting out in the parking, in a much larger parking lot. It's part of the architecture itself. And then that facade that becomes the terminating vista could actually be transparent. It could be multi-story in heights. It could actually potentially be something that you could see through or penetrate through visually, so that the line of access from the front door and the front porch of City Hall could actually migrate through the entire development. So that's something that we were interested to discuss as well. The smaller footprint, or the smallest footprint, is off of the new street. This is indicating a multiple tenant configuration of retail with residential above. And then this larger footprint here is the proposed grocery store that would enjoy high visibility from northbound and southbound Evergreen. That could have, in fact, small liner retail like a florist, a bank, a coffee shop, as well as the market, and make it so that you could penetrate or come in from the sidewalk off of Evergreen and into the store, or come from the store into that Chase Bank, let's say. And then another liner of retail here. So we've configured liner along all first floor conditions, including within the larger block. We've got a large decked or structured parking condition here. We've got some surface parking here that builds off of the relationship that Phoenix University has for its surface parking. And we're also acknowledging the Civic Center Plaza here, that maybe there's a possibility that future development could actually be persuaded, encouraged, cajoled to move in a westerly direction from this RFP site towards the highway. And if we go to the next plate, Alex, please. So this is that large building block that we were just talking about. That's the green block that shows structured parking. This is Evergreen Road, right? This is the lawn in front of City Hall, right here. So these are footprints of not the retail, but of residential product that could be a for sale and or for rent. And so we have residential product. Each of these rectangular type shapes are units, stairways, and elevators with single loaded corridors here, 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 and here. The hotel that Mr. Percassi was suggesting could actually be a boutique hotel with several rooms that becomes kind of the front facade, the terminating vista, we like to say, for that access off of the front porch of City Hall right here. And so the opportunity for the hotel's architecture to be somewhat notable and dramatic, putting lots of eyes on the street, because you're going to have lots of guests that are coming and going throughout the day and the evening, seems to make a lot of sense here. So this is kind of a snapshot of the ground floor uses that are mixed and varied. It's a snapshot of the residential programs that could be deployed above the retail programs, just like you recognized in your preferences. It accounts for structured parking, which provides a safe destination to cover your cars while you're doing business. It promotes the idea that once you park your vehicle, you can walk about, you can shop, you can go to work, right? You can eat, all in one very sort of quick
You
visit.
just mentioned that the shaded stuff to the right is not.
Yeah, so that's a very good point. So Evergreen Road, ladies and gentlemen, is really the easternmost boundary of the RFP subject matter. So I started with the conversation about this lot in front of your parcel. That's not in your current RFP proposal. We are simply suggesting today that in the future, or sooner than later perhaps, there could be some discussion, if you were willing, to consider extending that RFP to include that property. But of course, that's a much larger discussion. We're just simply acknowledging that with that green space, there comes that opportunity for development. But our focus has clearly been on the footprint that you're seeing me circumscribe with this flashlight right now.
Mr. Cruz?
Yeah, I was just curious about the parking. You said that developers seem to be reluctant and stuff about that. But will we, I don't know if this may be a council decision we have to make, will we charge for parking if we build a deck?
So there's,
That's a good question.
And the cost involved in that.
so there's as many ways that you could go about this as there are solutions to this problem. We can talk about, we brought with us some best practices that talk about how cities have approached this, knowing that this needs to be done. There's been communities that have just straight up bonded their decks and put that out for a later development. You can TIF it, or you can see if you can get a developer to come in halvesies with you on this. It really depends on what kind of how rich the market is when you release the RFP. But the question about how do we charge for it? Absolutely. But you don't charge the customers. What you do is probably the boutique hotel. There would always be like a published rate to use this deck, but the boutique hotel would validate, so they're the folks that don't have to stay there. The folks that use the grocery store would probably validate. What you're doing is you're letting each developer not have to, each individual developer, you would do a fee in lieu of. So typically based on your particular code, you have to build one space for every, let's say, I don't know, 400 square feet of commercial. You would say, okay, Mr. Developer, give us a little bit of money for building your grocery store because you don't have to build surface parking. It's sort of an incremental. But then what you also have is on-street parking that you see everywhere here. And there's lots of ways you could go about doing that. What some of the lifestyle centers more in the Midwest do is they do meters. And they're an actual meter where you pop a quarter in or you do something. And it's really not because you're trying to make money off of it. It's just to make sure people don't park there and stay all day. What a lot of them do is a weekly charity where pop your quarter in and you're given sort of courtesy tickets like warnings. And there's many ways you could go about doing it. But that's really not about generating revenue. It's about keeping the street active and making sure that the spaces turn over. So charging for the parking, maybe once in a blue moon somebody would not figure out how to get it validated, not stay at the hotel and just really want a place to park their car. And there might be one person that ends up parking, but it's a multi-purpose environment on how the parking gets done.
Mr. Brown?
With respect to the interest that was shown in the top item was a grocery store. That was the, I guess, the sandwich. What, I'm assuming that whatever is finally developed, there has been a market study to determine that that is a viable, feasible entity. I didn't see anything that said a hotel was needed. Is there a document somewhere?
So one of the things that this is, and we're going to talk about this when we get the lights back on, that the hotel is a sort of a placeholder for a third place. Right. And it's something that at least our expert that we grabbed for the purpose of this team anecdotally really felt that could be viable. Okay, so they didn't actually conduct the market study to vet that out, and so we can do that going forward.
Okay, yeah. But let's just say, if the hotel, whatever.
The third place, yeah.
The W or whoever, Starwood or somebody, they would determine that there's a market here. And I'm assuming that the West End perhaps is not getting enough business, or these other small places are not getting enough. I can't
well,
really.
It's not even so much as this is not This place doesn't exist right now.
This is just a concept.
Well, this is just a concept, but the problem is the reason they haven't been banging on your door so far is that this environment doesn't exist in Southfield right now.
Okay.
It's Mr. Gibbs and others' belief that if this rich pedestrian environment is created, you're gonna build a demand for hotel in this type of environment. You guys are so well positioned from a transportation, just from a, I know you already know that because you're SLOGO, center of it all, but just from a centrally located position, it's just going to layer on the demand if this walkable environment is created. And I don't even think that you need to spend your money doing another market study to say so. I think once we start getting the confines of what this thing looks like together in an RFP, and then you start to present it, I think you're going to start getting more interested people in the hospitality department coming back.
Okay.
Did that answer, I'm not quite sure, did that answer your question in a roundabout way?
Yeah, you pretty much hit the, well, basically, you said about the need of the question from a standpoint that we will create a need and then people will come back and satisfy that.
I think that you're gonna find that,
Okay.
yeah.
All right, I get you.
Mr. Cusson.
What's the square footage of that so-called grocery store?
That one is 38. Yeah, about 38. Yeah, about 38,000.
38,000 is the square footage. It's actually a little bit more square footage than the West Bloomfield Plum Market at Maple and Orchard Lake Road, which is around 34,000.
So just to give you a, the massive grocery stores are usually teetering around the 200,000. The sort of smaller mid-level are around 100,000. So this is definitely a boutique grocery store.
I have a question. Did you, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Can you indicate boutique grocery stores that still are existing?
Mm-hmm. Plum Market,
Or Plum Market?
Trader Joe's,
Market.
Market
If you
Fresh.
look at the neighborhood, that's why Plum Market is existing, and you got Kroger's across the street, which is expanding and building a fleet gas station there. They're expanded twice.
So one of the things that, and they're probably...
Aberdeen 5 Mile, they bought a school, they're having a major grocery store there. It's going to be everything is going, bigger.
Well, I actually would maybe challenge that a little bit. They are going bigger because they can, and it's cheaper for them to build bigger. They can maneuver their trucks around. We actually, that little conference I was just telling you about that happened last week, we had 4 of the major international grocery stores that are all trying to find what they call their urban prototype. They're trying to get 50,000 square feet and under because the urban market is really where they're trying to get. They're trying to create smaller. One of the problems that a lot of these major grocery stores have is it's not because they can't exist smaller. They're certainly happy to because it's cheaper for them. There's lots of ways that they can operate from a staff perspective. The bigger challenges with the American grocery stores, especially the Walmarts of the world, the Meijers, our good friends on the west side of the state, is that typically when they sign a lease with a larger conglomerate like a General Mills or something like that, and they carry one of their cereals, they are under contract to carry everything in their portfolio of UPCs. And they essentially have to build these giant grocery stores because they're obligated to carry so many UPCs. And that environment, that sort of contractual relationship, we're really starting to break down as the Trader Joe's of the world, as the Whole Foods of the world, as these smaller, Bob was talking about one of these new grocery stores that's really looking at going smaller in these markets, is starting to buck that system. So that larger kind of Uber hold on these massive grocery stores, we're really starting to see those contracts tick up less and less. It might be happening for us because don't forget, here in Michigan, we're sort of on the tail end of trends from a retail world, but what we're starting to see nationally is that starting to tail off and trending less and less.
When you're talking urban center, you're talking about density and population. After 5 o'clock, there's not enough traffic in there to keep a grocery store.
Well, not if we build it in that single use that we talked about, where it's just retail or it's just restaurants. One of the things that's important for this environment is for us to also build residential as well. Also build restaurants that stay open past 7 o'clock. That's sort of the whole purpose of this larger vision that we're trying to create here.
Okay?
I was just saying, like, I hear what you're saying on that guy, but also just, thinking back to our conversation with Kroger not too long ago. This is seems like a good opportunity for us too, at the same time,
You can't make a living inside a grocery store like that. You can't make a living.
Well, maybe offline, we'll kind of show you some of the recent.
I've been in the business all my life, and I went out of business because I wasn't keeping up with the big ones.
Right.
Right now, you need Magnum Foods, 4 or 5 meat counters, Mammoth vegetables, and flowers, and the whole caboodle now. You can't keep a small
Well, but
store.
that was the case about 10 years ago when the superstores were really in vogue. But again, based on the new market demands and the new preferences, based on a lot of the demographic that we're seeing, they actually prefer to shop smaller and are more tolerant of these denser mixed-use environments. Believe me, this particular prototype that we're showing you here of 50,000 or less is not something that we just pulled out of our hat. This was something that the market study came back and said that there's a serious demand for as your anchor. I mean, they're so strong about this that they know that this is going to be an anchor, just like a department store would be an anchor in a mall. And the best practices show us that the anchor can support all of this additional inline retail as well.
We really don't have, outside of the Westin, a name hotel in the city. You have Troy's Building 5, Farmington Hills Building 4. We are in direct relationship to Detroit. It's easier to get to Southfield from Detroit if you're at Como or want to go down for the ball game or something. It's easy access.
So are you saying, what is it about
the
the
hotel, a good hotel like the Westin, another Westin, can make it big time here in the city.
Yes, but
If
again.
you did have Marriott over
Yeah.
here, Marriott would be one that I would say would do very, very well there.
Yeah, it would, but again, but we have to build this environment first, because if they wanted to be here, they'd be here. So that's really a really important distinction. There's lots of available land, so that we have to make sure that we understand the distinction between.
Yeah, but
There's
let me just say this, let me just say then I'll stop. But when you look at what's happening in the area, the theme isn't carrying, because you look at Redical, and I told Terry, they're next to Blue Cross Blue Shield, they take a beautiful frontage on Civic Center Drive, build a parking lot. All right, it's cheaper, it's not 25,000 a spot or 30,000 a spot, they just eat up more land.
Right.
And so the developments in the whole triangle are not heading in this direction. So you're not getting more and more density to compensate, to assist this thing from going, and this one can't stand alone, as far as I'm concerned. Right? The rest of the guys got to buy in.
Well, I think that, well, one of the reasons that they're doing that is because they can, your code permits it right now.
No, it doesn't really, it had to get special.
On the surface parking front, you can build surface, you can build as much
You have to
surface.
walk a quarter of a mile to go to the engineering building. Did you do that in the wintertime?
I'm not quite sure I know the specific
Well,
instance that we're talking
right
about.
to the west of Central Park Boulevard, there's the lofts, and then there's Cancer, and then there's Blue Cross Blue Shield, and then they got a big swath that goes from Civic Center Drive all the way to the engineering building.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Parking lot. It's all parking lot.
Mhm.
No, so in other words, I'm trying to figure out how we're going to get everybody aboard in that whole triangle.
Oh,
We're
so
talking
you're
about the
saying,
city
okay,
center.
I'm with you. So what you're saying is
In
that
other
we're
words, a
not,
hotel would go if everybody else would put in some of the ingredients that you have in the corner,
but,
and, and get some density, some maybe 4 or 5 or whatever, maybe a 2-story luxury apartment complex or whatever to go along with what where you've lost with you know, you have all kinds of apartments, but you don't have any luxury. You had North Park Towers, but that's. you know,
So
south.
you're on the hotel, I mean, we're still
Well,
on the hotel.
I just think that there's money, you know, even Dib says, there's money right now for hotels and motels, that's why everybody's building them.
And I think, so definitely, we're with you. There's a need for a hotel. We think that it's, that developers will be interested if we can create the environment. I think one of the other things you were saying, if I was following you, is that we're not, we might build this, but it's going to be difficult to have that contiguous environment. We're going to build this and then they'll still be adjacent to surface parking. Is that what you were talking about?
You haven't got anybody else to complement it.
Right, exactly. And I think that that's one of the things that when we first started talking about is that we know that we have to start somewhere with this environment. We know we don't want to do, or we don't think that we should do more of the same. And that we also know that based on the best practices in all these other places that we've been showing you, is sometimes starting off these places are so wildly successful that sometimes that's enough. And as new development comes online, that there's opportunities to follow along with that.
A couple of things. Traffic circulation between the two roundabouts. Is that going to be a problem with it coming off of Evergreen into, in and out? Talk about traffic circulation up and down Evergreen.
Right, so one of the things that we started talking about, and again, these are just concepts, this hasn't
Sure.
been engineered out, but that's actually one of the first things that we talked about when we were looking at this curb cut across to Evergreen. We'll let the traffic engineers do their job. What will more than likely happen is this might be a right turn in and a right turn out only around this environment, and there's still plenty of other punctuations and opportunities to get in and out of the development. But we'll let the traffic engineers do their job on that. Probably one thing that you're probably not going to want to do is come up here and then do a left turn in. It's probably going to be right turns in only off of Evergreen. But again, we haven't engineered it yet, but that's probably a pretty good point.
Yeah. Also, in this concept, is there room for like a farmer's market?
Oh, absolutely. Well, absolutely, and that's one of the things that we were going to talk about in this public space here. We think that there's tons of opportunity for programming in this space, and one of the things that we wanted to talk to you guys more about here in a minute.
Okay, and the last thing I'm going to say now is, we keep talking about after 5 o'clock, there's nobody around. But that's in the business. We got the 5,000 town center. We've got all the kids from Orange Tech.
Right.
We've got condo, we've got townhouses that are right in that proximity that if we develop what is an attractive place, all of those people that now get in their car and go grocery shopping someplace else, or to a restaurant someplace else, or buy a birthday card, someplace else, can instead walk here. And if we make enough of an exciting place, it won't be an old hat. Oh, we've been to that restaurant, so we don't want to go back there.
Right.
So.
And that's one of the critical, in addition to figuring out how we're going to get this parking to work.
Yes.
The second, probably most critical thing is programming this space and always having something. You guys are already doing such a great job with all of your citywide programming. This is going to be an excellent opportunity and probably a pretty important feat to always program. And if you look at the best practices, things are always changing. This is not just a retail, this is something that has a tremendous amount of programming involved in the effort.
Okay.
And that's an excellent point.
Dan had his hand.
With respect to creating the environment, creating the concept, utilizing all the best practices that your profession can bring to bear. What is the next big step? We will settle on, as a council, as a city or whatever, we will settle on the concept of best practice in the environment that we want to create. Once we've done that, what is the most challenging thing? Is it to get a developer to buy into it, or what is the most, once everything, this is what we want to do, what's the most?
Well, we're never going to know until you release it. It's
But is
probably,
that the challenge? I mean,
Well, the-
once we come to a point, A, B, C, D, what's the most challenging?
well, it's also, probably the most challenging will be depending on what's going on in the market for that first year that you release these residential units, because as we know, things can change on a dime. But I think the biggest challenge is going to be getting a local developer or a Midwest comfortable developer to take on either, because you're not going to get it to do both, either take on the investment of this infrastructure that we just described. You've got, these are streets we're creating. They're going to be private, but they're going to be publicly accessed streets, or the parking deck. One or the other is really getting them on board and showing them the best practices on how they can get a lot more bang for their buck and the square footage prices by putting that little bit of extra investment in that we're talking about. And then I think the next challenge is really going to be finding that entity to actually program this environment that we're talking about. I'm sure you guys are already, the city's probably already tapped out in everything that they're doing, is finding that entity to actually program these spaces that we're talking about. The farmer's market, I'm sorry, go ahead.
When you use the term program,
Yeah.
you mean
So programming would be-
systematically put them in place?
So programming would be everything from actually holding I don't know who mentioned it, actually working through the farmer's market, holding a holiday, come sit on Santa or whoever you believe in during the holiday season's lap, holding the outdoor movie night, actually holding the reading events. All of these places have some sort of programming involved in who's the entity that's going to take that on. A lot of cities have found different ways, either through private, the city will take it on, a private entity, etc. That's probably the next biggest
You
challenge.
mean systematically
Yep.
creating events and, okay, all right.
If I could jump in, Plymouth has their ice festival. Ann Arbor's and Grand Rapids have their art festivals. Northville has their flower show. There's antique shows, but it's programming throughout the year. Everything from family-oriented fun nights, whether it's the movies, whether it's entertainment,
Okay, I got it.
those types of things that create the space and then create activities that bring people. Eat to the Beat was an activity in an empty parking lot. Now you have a venue that has outdoor seating and interaction. It's more and more friendly and welcoming.
Okay.
And I think a lot of communities that don't have something like this really underestimate how much work that is. Once it's up and running, it's a little bit easier, but that's a lot of work for some sort of an entity. So I would, to be very real with you, that would probably be a challenge as well. But it's certainly worth it. And when we talk about, you've got to have something running all season long. Everybody has to have, I forget which one of you gentlemen said, a new reason to come back all the time to keep it fresh. And these places are fairly popular.
Just Seymour, that's a question.
Yeah, what I was hoping to see, excuse me, and don't say there, some sort of a water feature, a fountain where people could sit around in lunchtime, something, that's very lively. Some sort of a water feature, preferably a fountain.
Yeah, so what you're seeing here is just a concept of the framework. So
Does that sound realistic in your?
Oh, sure, and all of those places have them.
I know they do, that's what makes me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But sort of the interior network, this is just, the developer is going to come back with what they think their design is going to be. We're going to bake into it what we think the larger framework wants to be.
I understand what you're saying, but a water feature would fit into this concept.
She said yes.
Well, I just want to make sure. That's a different, a fountain versus a stream,
Any other questions? Okay. So I don't even know where we were. So Mark was talking about circulation. So I think that was a very good question about how that works. If we go back to circulation just one more time. So again, this is Evergreen. Right turn in and probably right turn out is ultimately how that would happen. This new street over here will probably serve more of a service drive. You've got, of course, Central Park, and then Civic Center. One of the things that this new street here lines up exactly with the curb cut across the street as well. And people would access the parking, a parking deck of some sort from both Central Park Boulevard and from Civic Center Drive as well. But again, these things are just concepts, and actually working out the engineering would be to come. Next slide. In retail and restaurant, again, we were working with the numbers what we knew could be absorbed from a market potential standpoint. That anchor retail would be anywhere from, we talked about 40,000 square foot grocery store, 10,000 square foot in this liner piece here, and 12,000 square foot. So we're spreading out the anchor retail. Restaurants could be in various locations that line the street, and then your inline, your smaller boutique retail would line the new green. Again, that hotel, we've talked about the hotel or other places, and we can talk about that a little bit more. Other communities have used performing arts environments. If you have a larger benefactor that's interested in some sort of office or location, that could also take the place at the hotel as well. But again, it's important to have at that front door active ground floor environments with indoor-outdoor spaces. Well, I'm sorry?
Mr. Cruz.
Oh, sorry.
Well, that's when you were on the slide about the restaurant. I'm curious as to what type of restaurants you think that this space could handle. Would it be on the ends of a J. Alexander or Ocean Prime type level, or?
So your market study came back with, thanks, Alex. She knows exactly what we're looking for. So your market study came back with limited service, and in market study terms, that means upscale. So that could mean any of those in that target market. But also, because you're going to have an anchor, those restaurants also spur on additional more fast casual type environments as well. So they thought that you could absorb as many as 4 of those. There's that big of a deficit. Again, we'll see who comes to market, but you could very safely plan for 3 of those environments, and it'd be absorbed very quickly. And then in addition to a hotel, we feel that there's also potential for some sort of banquet, meeting, or performing space. And based on that block that Mark talked about, that tees itself up very well to be sited on Central Park Boulevard, as well as having direct access to some sort of a parking facility. And that size was coming in at around 30,000 square feet, which would be about a 1,300 person capacity. So that performance space could either be standalone, it could be in adjacent to a meeting facility, but again, it being all interwoven with this mixed-use environment is part of the draw. And then Mark talked about the residential, and again, just to keep everybody clear that this is our 8 acres with some sort of possible future development to the east across the street. We've got upper level flats at 3 levels each, so you have 3 independent units all on top of each other at about 48 units on one side and about the same across the street as well. That open space that we talked about where we're going to have the fountain or some sort of water feature, we have sort of what you see here, an A is a new green. I know on your piece of paper that doesn't look like a very big space, but comparatively it's very appropriately sized. The worst thing that you can do is actually make these places too big, where they feel too vacuous and people don't feel that they're being engaged. Those are probably, this is at about 17,000 square feet, this new green, and that's probably the exact right size. This B is a plaza, that actual foreground of either the hotel or your performing arts space, whatever the market will bear. You have some sort of a garden terrace adjacent to your banquet and dining. And then if we want to get wild and crazy, we can go across the street and start looking at opportunities on your existing City Hall property as well.
Amy, I might add that the distance between the face of any of the buildings that were being proposed here and the curb is fairly generous. So it's not, I just want to be clear with you that on the drawing, it's not a 5-foot sidewalk. These are 20-foot deep sidewalks that allow for spill-out activities, cafe seating, benches, planters, right, water features, trees, right, street lamps, so that the cross-section between the curb and the face of the building is fairly generous, which allows for its own series of place-making opportunities, as well as that green space in the center. When you conflate the green space in the center with the cross-section of the sidewalks, you come up with a very vibrant sort of scenario.
And Mark, you also have a plan for on-street parking.
Yes.
Which helps create a buffer between.
That's right. It provides, obviously, as a consumer myself, it provides for a lot of convenience, but it creates another layer of distance, which helps make that place a little bit more manageable and identifiable. Good point.
And of course, that will continue to build off the existing assets you have with Gratitude down the South Roundabout, with some of the other fun places.
Which looks fabulous.
Yeah, which looks great. Are those both orange on purpose?
I'll leave that for another.
Oh, okay. Well, it's good. It shows
It's
up.
supposed to be visible.
Okay, well, that's in its place.
Is that you in that picture?
That is.
It's
Awesome.
And again, we talked about the year-round potential and cannot overstate enough the importance of programming. And then parking, we've talked a lot about some sort of parking facility. We know that is probably going to be necessary to build this compact, walkable environment. I think we've already a small teaser service lot that will be almost entirely camouflaged by liner retail. And then we talked about that on-street parking. Again, that's not a revenue generating, that's truly just to get the spaces to turn over. And then we can talk in more detail about what this site would hold in this particular concept. This is just one way to skin a cat. We think it's pretty good, but however the developer wants to respond, how that works out. And then again, we've talked a lot of times, so again, coming back to the best practices, anchors, that anchor grocery in this particular market study, this particular place serves as the anchor that will hopefully spur on additional and getting that mix right. Active street level uses is really important part of this concept. Pedestrian-oriented design, connections, programmable public spaces, and multiple reasons to visit. So you guys already brought up what all of the issues are probably going to be in play here. We talked to you when we very first were looking at some of our best practices. We brought a couple of examples about how other cities have managed to get this done. We talked to you last time about University Place in Washington. The city built a mixed-use civic building, but that's because they were rebuilding their own city hall, containing the library, their police headquarters, as well as the transit center garage behind it. And all of the private development came on board from there. You don't have to do it like that. That's the way this particular development chose to go forward. Addison Circle, which is much bigger scale, we talked about this last time, but they put all the infrastructure in first. Over the first 2 phases, the city invested $9 million at the city's general fund to actually create the actual street grid, the curb and gutter, all of the amenities from a stormwater perspective, and actually put that development in place. So we talked, it's like one or the other, either the actual parking or the infrastructure a lot of times, and how they go about doing that through either bonding or tipping is completely dependent on that city. So you can turn up the lights. I'm really sorry. Are you guys, can you see okay after that horrible visual there? We'll show it to you again when the bulb's replaced. It'll look much better. Yeah.
Using Ms. Seymour's suggestion as, like a water feature, if it's done right, like they did in Western Virginia, in the wintertime, it could be used as a skating rink.
Yes.
That's right.
Yeah. The skating and finding those programmable spaces for the winter are really important. You have to start getting really creative. Of course, the holidays are easy. Everybody will come out under a warming hub, but those January, February months are really important to keep that going. Alex is coming around.
So what we're gonna ask is, we're gonna try to break into groups of 2 to 3, and we'd like to try to have elected officials in separate groups, and then our key department heads and staff pairing up with the elected officials. 2 to 3 people per exercise.
Good luck.
So after Amy introduces the concept, if we could do a little bit of rearranging. Some
It'll
of
be
the
okay, I promise.
Department heads like the chief of police, and Larry and Rochelle can come up, Doug will come up on the inside and pair up with some council persons.
And what are we gonna be doing?
He's gonna introduce it right now.
Because if it's planning, I want Jeff.
Okay, so what you have in front of you is this open space that we've talked about. I think we hit you over the head now with best practices. Let's stop talking about how other cities do it. Let's talk about how we're going to do it. And one of the most important things that we really wanted to get from you and how to really make this place authentic, because we think that from a financial and from a market standpoint, we think we really have the right mix here of what's going to happen and what's going to be needed to be done. But the way that you can really show off and show what you are all about at Southfield is really in that programming, in that open space. So what you have in front of you is potential, like a menu. If we're going to this fabulous white tablecloth dining that we can't wait to go to. If you have a menu in front of you, how you envision this open space works or this new park works. What I'd like you to do is, as Carrie recommended, break into teams of 2 or 3 and talk about what you think the best elements, the best programming would need to go into this space in order for this place to be a success. So we have on your menu, we have a couple of ideas. We have a dancing fountain, number 2. Number 2 is the dancing fountain. We have temporary performance lawn, movable seating, a kids' play space, lawn games, small food and beverage kiosk. Cross some of these out if you think they're good. If you think they're horrible ideas, circle them if you think they're good. And then we'd like to add your own. If you're in charge of programming this space for the first year, what do you think are the absolute key ingredients for this to be a success? And you don't have to go all the way to Z if you think that, maybe 3 things are all that are necessary. And we're going to get together, just take like 5 minutes, and then we're going to go back and kind of round robin what we think are your best ideas. Any questions?
Do you want us to put them in where we think they ought to be?
Yes, please. If you've got ideas on locationally where you think they need to happen, just put like A with a circle around it.
So we're gonna ask staff to come on the inside, pair up with an elected.
Yeah, it's just in case.
You can draw, write, scribble, graffiti, whatever you're comfortable with, and we're here to help.
But if we do right turn, again, it's not a design. It's just and just so you know, you pick somebody who's going to report back your fabulous plan.
Yeah, like the old Patty stuff. Yeah. See, now that's cool. Everybody loves those little coffee tubs now. That's right.
So when you're on the inside, go ahead and just stay where you are. You can just turn your chairs around. And I'm going to start with this group right here.
No, start over there.
Wait, all right,
You ready? Yeah. Okay. So just go ahead and stand up and use your microphone and tell us about your fabulous park you guys created.
Okay. We talked about, in the area closest to Evergreen, we talked about having a outdoor working space, so having portable charging stations for people that want to charge their cell phones, work with their laptop, maybe have some vendor carts throughout the summer, ice cream or sandwiches, other outdoor seating tables with umbrellas. Maybe when it gets chilly in the fall, having the outdoor heating units that are mobile. And then over in the new green space here in the center. We talked about the dancing fountain, farmer's market, kids playscape, and maybe outdoor amphitheater. Did I miss anything?
Farmers market.
Farmer's market. Yep, that's it.
Good job. Okay, Doug's friend and Councilman Cruz's group.
I don't know if you can hear me or not.
Here.
I'm going to be facing somebody's back. Splash pad, dog park, farmer's market. In terms of restaurants, some ideas, J. Alexander's or Black Rock. A Lego event. Possibility of outdoor yoga. It's a very popular Parks and Rec trend with like adult play structures where we can literally stop the traffic going in the roundabouts. We also came up with multiple uses for a dancing fountain. There's a demand for public ice skating. Basically flood that area and then freeze it over. Any other ones I'm missing? The Lego event, outdoor Lego. We had talked with Terry about outdoor chess, checkers, where individuals are the actual pieces like they have in New York City. And one thing, when my kids were much smaller out at Briarwood, I don't know what the technology is called, but it was usually outside the food court or children's-oriented stores where you could literally hop around and they superimpose some computer template, and the little ones, you could keep them occupied all day if you wanted.
All right, good job. Okay, Council President's group.
One of the downfalls of talking too loud is the other two groups steal all your ideas. In the center, the center green spot, we talked about in the long part, we talked about a fountain. In the summertime and in the wintertime, we could freeze it over and have ice skating. In the small square, public art, we could put public art, something that would be attractive as cars went up and down Evergreen Road. We talked about electrifying certain areas with outlets so that there can be street performers. In Grand Rapids, that's what they've done, and you bring your own instruments and you just plug in, first come, first serve, and you get to play to your heart's content. And as long as you don't stay too late, there's, there's no rules on the music and stuff. So I think that would be helpful in making sure that the face of what's going on keeps changing, so that it keeps a fresh face, so that people can come down and say, I wonder what's going on tonight. But also, for those people that are dining outside, you could have, depending on how good the musicians are, they would be playing. We also talked about farmers market and maybe a tent where people could bring food from restaurants, come and sit and watch ducks, the geese from our golf course swim our pond. But also, and we came up with it first, so even though you reported first, having either tables with chess sets on them or a giant chess set where people can come and move it around and challenge each other to play chess. So one of the things we didn't take into a lot of consideration is, we're closing schools because people aren't having kids anymore. So I don't know that we wanted to spend a lot of money making a lot of play equipment for children, especially since we have all kinds of stuff right across the street. So, that's it.
All right, good job. Cassie?
We looked at staying pretty simple and mobile. We have the working population in Southfield, then if the apartment idea comes real, we have the people that live there. So we're looking at the art that could be changed or permanent, the portable staging so that you can have different types of events. We did stay away from kids before Council President stole our idea. But the small bar bistro, stuff small and it could change. You know, maybe it's a business that's here today and you know they grow, they make money, they move, or just something new. Small and portable, both our working population and our living population. That's what we wanted to do with the space. No kids and no dogs.
All right, good job. Ms. Seymour, Ms. Freeman?
We also did not want any kids in our party either. So our dancing fountain is not one of those splash pad fountains, but we do have a fountain, and in the evening it can change colors and be, you know, more creative. We also saw that we could have like a nice sit-down bistro with the back side of it, perhaps with a like carry-out bar to kind of cater to all different kinds of guests that might come to the facility. We would think that this entire space would be managed privately by the master developer that does the entire site, and they would have regularly organized activities like concerts, group exercise, yoga on the stage that we would have. It potentially could be portable, but a real nice stage where we can have the concerts and different activities. Also, you know, festivals, perhaps like a comedy festival or magic that kind of moves around with mimes and jugglers and that type of thing around the space. And pretty much a lot of the other ideas that were discussed. And again, with the ice skating, the fountain could turn into the ice. And face painting. And face painting. Face painting.
All right, good job. We're adults. Okay, Mayor's
we wanted to keep flexibility in the space, so we only picked 3 sort of more permanent fixtures. So going from east to west, we saw something, a dramatic landscape piece with perhaps some signage that you're at City Center, the shops at City Center, or whatever you want to call it, restaurants or at City Center, right on Evergreen, that would kind of draw you in. Then at the little turnabout space, we saw some public art, and then keeping the lawn as open as possible so that you could do a temporary performance stage, or you could do tents for rotating vendors and so on. We saw some seating at the very western end, but before the western end, we'd see kind of like you see a lot in Europe, as well as in Central Park. You walk along, and there's this little cafe, and you can get a drink or something light to eat, and you can sit outside, weather permitting, and that would also give the you know, one of the problems in Campus Martius that they've had with the Fountain Cafe there. They've had multiple owners now, or management in there, is visibility. Because of the way the traffic goes around Campus Martius, people can't stop. And this is more likely that at a cafe on the end, a small cafe with more visibility, and you don't have that kind of traffic, that again, it would be inviting. Also the thought that if you're doing this, visiting any of the inline retail, that, you know, perhaps you meet somebody at the cafe after they're done shopping, that sort of thing. So that we wanted flexibility, and we certainly do not want dogs. We're going to have
He's speaking for himself.
We're going to have a dog park. There's a great spot at Bedford Woods that we should look at.
Yeah, take your dog
And we felt that this was more of an adult, cultural, artistic draw that we want to bring here. More of a sophisticated crowd. Sorry, Mom.
All right, good job. Okay, our city clerk, Ms. Banks and her team.
And I got the chief. Well, we were kind of looking at this whole area, and we wanted to be safe and fun for everyone. We also agree, we've got a lot on this campus for kids, so no kids in this area. We need it for young adults or for the adults. We didn't really highlight what goes where, but we agree with the art at the end. Open restaurants where you can actually see the green space, and it was like, let's not overcrowd the green space. Let's put beautiful flowers, possibly tents if they're going to have some activity, but don't overdo it, because when you come out at nighttime, you go out to dinner, you grab your cappuccino, you want to be able to walk around and just enjoy the atmosphere. We said no to the, what was it, dancing fountains. Maybe have a fountain, but the dancing fountains where the kids jump in them, maybe we could put that on this campus. A fountain would be pretty. Kids games, forget it.
We have a fountain, that's right out there.
But, okay, but I mean, that type of a fountain, it doesn't work.
It needs to be repaired.
And then we were talking about, you know, higher end restaurants like the J. Alexander, how about a high-end Mexican restaurant? If anyone's been to Detroit, they've got like fantastic restaurants with outdoor seating that are in the middle of nowhere, and it's just, this would be a great area, and then just walk around. Bottom line is, do not overcrowd this space.
All right, good job. We just have one more quick exercise.
Yep.
And we'll wrap it up in about 10 minutes, and then Amy's going to introduce it.
So our new park that has no dogs, no kids. Sounds like a lot of wine at these fancy restaurants. A lot of water. It's sounding like Vegas, actually. So I think I'm coming. So the next exercise that we're going to do really quickly, and we appreciate you guys hanging in there with us. Let's say everybody's on board with this concept, and we've got our anchor retail. We have figured out a way to build this parking, this fabulous outdoor space with the fountains and the Lego activities, actually probably the adult Lego activities while drinking wine. And then all of a sudden we find out that the hotel backs out. The deal's dead. We know that a lot of these places happen, and it's sort of that third leg of the stool. We know we have our anchor retail with all the inline retail. We know that the residential is going to work. We really, to have this a dynamic space, we need this third place. And it can be supported by the larger market that's happening. It could be we started talking about a performing arts space. It could be a banquet venue where people host weddings and do something unique. It could be one other thing, and a lot of times with our best practices is, the reality is we can plan all we want. We can plan on the market, we can do market studies, we can do all of our engineering, but sometimes it's just about relationships and how things get put together correctly. So if you had to plan one more space in this development that we've put together, one more larger anchor, what would it be? Or what are some of your ideas for this development? And you can put together your top three. You can cross out some of our ideas, circle some you think are a good idea. And this one we're going to, because there isn't as many variables, we're going to go very quickly and report back in about 5-10 minutes.
First, we can wrap it up.
We came up with two things that we'd like to see in this area. First of all, hopefully the price point for the condos apartments, whatever, are gonna be upscale. And we'd like to see a smaller Lifetime Fitness Center somewhere in this area. We're talking high-end, not low-end, high-end. But that's all gonna be determined on the price point of the condos. Also, a boutique movie theater, like, was that Maple and 15 Mile? So the boutique. No, I said that first. So if anyone has ever been there before, I think. It's all up here. But if anyone's been to Maple and 15 Mile, there's only 2 shows that they play. They're basically more adult-only shows. They have a they have a art theater. Not too
Art house movies.
But they also have alcohol that they serve. They have casino. So it's a nice movie theater if anyone's ever been there.
All right, good job.
Very good.
Alex, oh, you'll pick these up as they report?
What we don't want is, we don't need a LTU extension campus, because it's right there. We also don't need a small business incubator, because it's in the Marks building just a hop away. We did look at, Chicago did, like a little performance place, a movie theater, boutique theater, art films, but not too arty. And you know, a lot of the smaller boutique theaters now have restaurant and a bar. Again, we're concentrating on adults, and we saw also perhaps a performance venue, something for small concerts or kind of like Magic Bag in Ferndale that has, you know, maybe stand-up comedy or you know, a small band, you know, concert space. So that's a. Otherwise, we'd love to see high-rise housing, at least 5 stories minimum, with retail down below.
Okay, good job.
The opposite. No, so we did think that some LTU students in the area studying would actually, they would get hungry and go and eat at one of our pop-up restaurants or shop at one of our pop-up retail stores that we thought would be really cool. I know that there are a lot of restaurants, pop-up restaurants that are in the area that use some of our existing restaurants for their emerging shops, so we think that that would be a great place for them to go. And then we also thought a performance venue would also be ideal for this location.
We were looking at doing like 3 ideas in one, and it all centered around a hotel with the banquet facility and with the performance venue. And we wanted to do anything other than have the Tinkers and Gypsies move in. But that would cover three bases, maybe in the same type of building, because we thought we were just building one of the anchors, and we already had the other 2. So that's what we were looking to do.
You've got nothing.
Yeah, we ruled out payday loans. Well, we thought about putting, we talked about a small movie theater, small theater in there, or a performing arts theater. Another idea would be really upscale dining with condos above. So those are our ideas.
We did talk about LA Fitness, talked about a combination performance venue and banquet center, not to name names like in Andiamo. One concept that I shared with the group in Chicago, they have something called Market Life or Food Life that's very swipe card driven, and basically it's a food court, and you can get everything from sushi rolls to Chinese food to matzo ball soup, and then it's attached to a more traditional sit-down restaurant They're also open food demo areas. They'll show you how to make fudge, etc. And then when you leave, you hand the swipe card, and then you don't realize until you leave that you spent $350 on a 20-second spin. But it's a great concept. It's in the water tower on Michigan Avenue.
We were last, but I think we had the best idea. We were having a year-round community performance center, a year-round community performance center that will keep the individuals here through the day, through the night, and also that would support the restaurants and everything else in this particular area. We have a good community center, or we can bring in outside plays on a yearly basis. And also representing we're going to have 2 council members. We have little people at home. I think this young lady would like to say something for kids.
Well, I just, we started off this conversation talking about how Southfield was made up of mostly single-family homes. And I just feel like if we're building apartments for all these millennials, we want them to stay here when they get to the point where we're ready to have children, and we don't have anything at all. So we talked about having an outdoor adventure center. Did you mention that? Maybe just something, but we can have something that's classy and that's nice. I just think there's something that we should do. I realize we have parks and recs, but a lot of times families, they go out together. And so when you have children, I just think we should have something. Just think about it. Something.
A Dairy Queen.
She's a woman, so she should.
Oh, it's this one. This one. There you go. That's okay. Okay. So, first of all, thank you very, very much for opening your ideas up to each other. This is how, as I mentioned, there's a lot of formula that goes into these things, but some of these are just going to be dumb luck and what takes off and what sticks at a certain point. So I think it's really important to kind of open your minds a little bit. We can try to play it as safe as we possibly can, but there's going to be some element of coincidence how this thing all shakes out. So next steps, what are we going to do next? We are going to, certainly, please leave your papers, unless you took some notes on it, at the table so that we can come around and collect those. I think we did a pretty good job of capturing all your comments, but we'd like to keep those so we can continue to refine it. You saw the early concept, and again, we actually had about 3 or 4 concepts. This was after shaking it out what we thought was the best. That's probably going to be the most easily replicatable. What we're going to do is take this and refine it a little bit further. We're going to test things a little bit more based on parking, based on your code, based on any tweaks from a market perspective. And then we're going to start doing some of these things that you talked about, like helping you envision as far as rendering goes, what we envision the street life would look like, what we envision this park space would look like. And we're going to be what's already informed that has been what we've heard from stakeholders during the visual preference survey and during this exercise. So when we come back to you next, we're going to have a pretty well-refined concept that will have a pretty good amount of the language that we think would ultimately want to be submitted in your RFP, as well as renderings that we think that this will ultimately look like. So you may or may not know that Shelley went to Vegas for ICSC. For those of you who don't know, that International Council on Shopping Centers. And these people, I'm sure she saw lots of really fancy cities that had all kinds of bells and whistles. And next year, if not sooner, during a intermediate, we would really like to have something to show those international master developers, retailers, etc., your vision for Southfield. We think that the time's right, we think that the market's in place, but most importantly, the developer doesn't want to play guess what I'm thinking with the city. They would love to go in there knowing how strong the market is and knowing that you have a very clear, implementable, permittable, parkable, infrastructuralable plan that you get really good responses that way back with the market study. So that's what we're going to do from a next step standpoint. Does anybody have any questions before we wrap up tonight? We really appreciate the trust you've given in us. We think we're really onto something. I think the next time we come, we're going to have a pretty solid plan in front of us.
You can bring my pen.
Did I take your pen? What? Oh, they're your pointer.
And through the chair, Mr. Frazier, I will make sure that each of the council gets a full copy of the PowerPoint presentation by your next meeting.
Okay. All right. We have some other business that we have to conduct before we recess and go back over to the Civic Center. This place closes at 9. This place closes at 9, so I have to go back over to the Civic Center. Terry, you ready? No, this place closes at 9, so we got to go back over to the...
We're not going to continue the meeting.
Pardon? We're going to do the rest of this meeting, and then we're going to go into closed session over at... The rest of the meeting here, the closed session, but I want to get the room cleared out.
I'm right here, take that long.
I know.
We gotta get up.
No, we got other stuff to do for you. All right, we have some more business to do. The next item on our agenda is to schedule a regular meeting conducted in the committee of the whole for Monday, the June 20th at 5:30. So I need a motion to...
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second. It's been moved by Mr. Flicassi, supported by Mr. Brightwell, that we schedule a regular meeting conducted as a committee of the whole for Monday, June the 20th at 5:30.
Did you need a rule 10?
Pardon?
Did you need a rule 10?
Yes.
Do we?
Mr. Chairman, I move Rule 10.
Wait a minute. What do we need a Rule 10 for?
This is a committee of the whole meeting.
Pardon?
This is a committee of the whole meeting.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I move for Rule 10. Support.
It's been moved by Mr. Fugasi, supported by Mr. Brightwell, that we find an immediate need to act. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Mr. Chairman, we move the letter of June 13th, rescheduling a meeting such as to be conducted in committee of the whole meeting scheduled Monday, June 20th, 5:30.
Support. It's been moved by Mr. Fugasi, supported by Mr. Brightwell, that we schedule a meeting for the June 20th as committee of the whole, 5:30. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed is carried. Ken, thanks for keeping me straight.
Not a problem.
Next item on our agenda is communications. We have two people that want to be recognized. It's Pamela Gerald. You have 3 minutes.
Testing 1, 2. Pamela Gerald, P.O. Box 155, Southfield, Michigan 48037-0155. My telephone number is 248-346-0439. These meetings are very productive. They show solidarity. It shows that there's no I in team, and that this administration is involving all of the various departments. I'm going to keep saying, until the cows come home, you're forgetting about one aspect with city government, and that's the employees. These sessions would be more productive and more conducive if you would just go on and do the right thing and give them a raise. Isn't it going to be awesome to have this beautiful new development? You've got restaurants coming in, you've got performance venues coming in, meeting rooms coming in, and then you have to hear from all of these wonderful, you have to hear from the employees to all of these new businesses how they're not being fairly compensated. That's going to be embarrassing. Now, I'm going to go back to what I said before. Some of you, when you campaigned, you talked about that. And you talked about the employee raises. Now, I don't know what goes on in closed-door sessions or what you're saying when you're not at a council meeting. But certainly at the candidates' forums, you talked about it. You know, one statement, and I mentioned it before, Ms. Morris, you said at a candidates forum that if the city could afford to pay for the Boy and Bear statue, they could give the employees a raise. What are you doing to advocate for the raise? Are you really telling Fred Zorn to do the right thing? Go back to the same account that he found Shelley's raise, Linda Statton's raise, and Rick Lemke's raise. You guys are just really treating these employees like crap. You want to go to mediation and then arbitration? And that's something that you would be proud of? Just like you allowed our police officers to go into arbitration a few years ago? Just think about it. And I live for the day when they cut some of your salaries. And let's see what you'll say.
The next person wants to be recognized is Mr. Gerard Mullen.
Gerard Mullen, Post Office Box 155, Southfield, Michigan 48037. Through the chair, I'd like to ask this council a question. How is it possible for your constituents to attend this meeting tonight? How is it possible when the posted legal notice for this meeting states the time at 7 p.m. and the location as City Hall, and not 6 p.m. at the library? And to top it off, if someone decides to attend this meeting, they will be greeted by a locked door at City Hall with no forwarding address. This sin of omission translates into a violation of the 1976 Open Meetings Act, and I quote from Public Act 267, Section 5, Subsection 3. If there is a change in the schedule of regular meetings of a public body, there shall be posted within 3 days after the meeting at which the change is made, a public notice stating the new dates, times, and places of its regular meetings, unquote. In fairness, the city did post an agenda for the meeting late last Friday afternoon on the city's website, but this falls short of the requirements of the Open Meetings Act. Thank you.
That concludes the portion of this meeting. I'm going to call for a 15-minute recess as we go to the City Hall to go into a closed session. But first, I need a motion to go into closed session. It's been moved by Mr. Fracassi, supported by Mr. Cruz. That we Mr. Cruz, that we go into closed session. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Seymour?
Yes.
Ms. Morris?
Yes.
Mr. Fracassi?
Yes.
Mr. Brightwell?
Yes.
Mr. Cruz?
Yes.
Mr. Frazier?
Yes.
You have 6 members in favor of going to closed session.
Thank you. I declare a 15-minute recess as we leave this location and reassemble in the study room at City Hall.